I forgot. Again, we're recording video, so I just did that. Welcome to Middle Fingers Up, the show where we hold our heads high and our middle fingers higher. I'm your host, Kieran McKay. Okay, today's episode, I just want to talk a little bit about this to everyone. Today's episode is a lot about understanding how our communities handle difference and what it means to truly belong. This isn't just a topic or a discussion. It's about someone's life. It's about someone's truth and their experiences navigating identity in a world that often rejects what it doesn't understand. And, seeing that it's November, it's Men's Health Awareness Month. And while we often don't talk too much about men's health, we sort of stick with the physical aspects of it. So we thought this would be a good topic because we rarely give the same kind of energy to mental and emotional health. So especially for men, and even more so for those who identify as part of the 2SL, LGBTQ plus community. And that's really what we're doing today. Like we've heard it before and we'll keep saying it here. Something being different from your world doesn't make it wrong. And so it just sometimes only, I feel when you're maybe faced with rejection for something out of your control, can you truly understand how deeply it cuts? In our conversation today, we're going to explore what it's like to live at the intersection of two rich but complex, marginalized communities. So this isn't just about being open-minded. It's about learning how fear, how misconceptions and cultural conditioning shape our beliefs and, how we can break through those barriers to create a world where people can feel safe and people can feel seen and people don't have to hide. So whether you're here to listen or learn or challenge your own perspectives, MFU is so glad that you're here with us. I think it's time to introduce our guest. So who's here today? We are truly, truly honored to be joined by Kevin Bhawan. He is a dedicated mental health practitioner. He has worked in all aspects with young people with struggles, cognitive behavioral. He's worked in schools. He's got a lot of mental health experience under his belt. He's also a proud member of the South Asian 2SL LGBTQ plus community. So you can guess why we're talking about what we're talking about with who we're talking about. So with, no more pausing and waiting, let's welcome Kevin. Thank you for being here, Kevin. So happy you're here. How are we?
Thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm doing so good. I'm so excited to do this. And that whole introduction that you just shared with us too brought so much light into the conversation too that we're about to start. But I'm stoked. I'm so excited to do this.
I appreciate what you just said. I'm glad that you felt that way. And I was going to ask you if there's anything you wanted to add or say in terms of what we're talking about today. Anything I missed?
I think you just hit the nail on everything. I think I wasn't actually aware that it was mental health awareness for men this month myself. So, and when you shared that, there's so much stigma around mental health, and especially when it comes to men, and us not being not having that sort of will to share about our feelings or being as vulnerable or as authentic really does put a damper on things, if that makes sense, or it's a struggle for some men. So I'm glad that we're heading into a direction where that's becoming more of a norm, I guess. But I guess conversation like this really does help men out there to really just talk about like what's going on for them.
Yeah, no, and I just want to clarify. June is, I think, usually mental health, but it's men's health awareness. So it's, even though it is about health, so Movember is all about talking about prostate, men's health. We just thought over here, like, why not throw in some of what you just said, right? Emotional, mental health related health, because all of that is hand in hand. It's body, mind connected. So, I think that's an extra layer to part of why we get to have you. You're like, you hit the 3 spots. You're a dude, you're a South Asian dude, and then you're a South Asian dude that belongs to another marginalized community. So, like, it's the 3 marks the spot. So I'm excited to get into this. So, and maybe we can go ahead, like, jump right in if you're ready. We just thought we could have you introduce yourself and share a little bit about what being part of the South Asian N2SL community means to you.
Yeah, well, as Karen mentioned before, my name is Kevin, and I've always been a part of like the LGBT community as young as I can remember, but when I came out is when I was like 24. And that's when I truly felt that I was like a part of something. I finally felt like sort of like a little bit of a sense of belonging. In the beginning, it was quite hard, but for me, it means just a lot of pride, a lot of freedom, more joy that I have in my life that I didn't have before coming out. And I think more so for me now, it's like I see so many queer brown people coming out at such a young age too, whether it's like on social media or like kids that I work with at school and things like that. And it's just like, wow, that's so fucking cool, because like I didn't give myself that opportunity, to like be that confident enough to really come out. And it makes me feel just so happy, and it gives me a sense of hope that like the work that all of us have done, whether you're straight, gay, bi, whatever, like the entire community itself has put these young people in a place where they feel like, hey, I can actually be myself at this young of an age and not have to wait for X amount of years to come out, or when I move out, or like, I know some people have like moved out of the country to really just be themselves, but it's like, no, like, let me just do this now, face my fears and just go through the shit and just like work through it. So I think like doing podcasts and things like this as well, like helps me share my voice and my journey. And hopefully this will come to a little gay brown boy, come to a little gay brown girl too, to be like, okay, if he's gone through this, and maybe this gives me some sense of hope too. So that's why when you first reached out to me, I'm like, there's a purpose behind this, So, but yeah, it just feels awesome just to like come out and just like truly be who you are. I know it sounds so like sometimes cliche or woo woo, but it is truly what brings you a lot of like happiness and joy to yourself.
Look, people can call it cliche. Maybe you feel that because you have to repeat it and say it often. But at the end of the day, when you get to be who you are, we're talking about our identity, like what makes us, what we live in our heads and our body with all day. When we get to do that, then that equals joy. That means we get to live with some sort of peace, maybe not all the peace and all the joy, but knowing, okay, at least I'm showing up as who I am. So I think you're absolutely right. Having, someone like you on to talk, having more young people, like always, I agree. If we can give the young generation kudos, we should, because we're learning so much from them in comparison to, the resources that they now have that we didn't. And so I appreciate how they're accessing their voice and utilizing it. So that's really cool that you're also seeing young South Asian kids starting to take that step. Can I ask, like, we live in a world that often forces people into categories, right? Like straight versus gay and male versus female. And as we know, like, that's just not how the world works only. So how do you view identity as being more fluid than these kind of binary labels?
I mean, to me, it's like, I don't give a fuck, like, who you are, what you identify as. Like, it's literally that, It's like, be who you are, like, and just show up as you are. And then I will honor and respect that and make sure that you feel safe in whatever way you need.
Yeah.
And I feel like, the world is shifting so much. Like every other day, it's just like there's just new things that keep coming up and coming up and coming up, especially around like our community, I feel, and like who you identify as. And I, I truly feel this, like, as much as we're getting educated and things like that, it's like, why can't, rather than dissecting and being so deep into it, it's like, why can't we just allow people to be who they are? If they're just like, hey, this is who I am, please respect these pronouns, for example, just leave it at that and just respect it. Like, that's their journey, that's their truth. Why do we, I feel like sometimes we're just like, but why? Why? But like, do we really need to know why? Like, if that's how they're identifying us, like, just respect it and just be chill with it. Like, that's cool,
Yeah.
So I think, like, for me anyways, it's like, yeah, like, show up as you are, and I want to honor and respect that in whichever way it is. Like, it's none of my business really, like, of what your journey is. If you want to share that, of course, by all means, I would appreciate that. But if it's like, no, just treat me as who I am in this moment, then let's have a good time, like that's all that really matters to me. It's just like, just show up. We don't have to make it as complex as I feel people make it seem these days sometimes.
Why do you think that's happening? Like, why do you think we are? Because you're right, we get in the way, we do this to ourselves. And why do you think we're doing it and making it more complex?
I think there's just so many things. I think it's what we see on social media as well. There's like so many different point of views and perspectives and opinions, and that can sometimes, I guess, like shift like our own perspective,
Yeah.
rather than just like letting things be in the moment. Like, I've always been that kind of person as well. Like, many people have asked me like my opinions on like the gay community and the queerness and all of those things. And my answers are really never that deep, It's very just like, I honestly don't care. Like, not that I don't care about community, but it's like, if you're gonna tell me you're this and this, then I will honor and respect that. Like, that to me, you just sharing that just shows how vulnerable and honest you are with me. Like, I think I also relate to it because I know how that feels.
Yeah.
I know how 24 years of my life, like, I kept a secret where I wasn't able to share who I was, and I wasn't able to, I didn't have that courage to really be myself. And I know how much trauma that brought to me, and a lot of like self-esteem issues and confidence and a whole bunch of things, and it's almost like I can identify with that person. Like, you don't need to say anymore. Like, we're good, like, I get it. And I think that in itself, just having that quick acceptance creates that safety for that person where they're just like, you know what, like, I like how the fact that you didn't really ask me a whole lot. So this gives me a chance to be like, okay, when I'm ready, then I'll be able to share more. So I think it's cool. Like I said before, our world is shifting and there's like so many great things that are happening in our community and with just everything in general.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm just like, I just wish we can just like keep things in life more simple and just like let it be. Just like, I feel like that would just create a lot of peace in the world.
Well, I mean, like, even when you think about it, like, I don't walk around and have people ask me as a heterosexual woman, like, all these things about my sexual orientation. Because at the end of the day, like, that's a big part of it. And yet when you're marginalized and when you don't fit in the box that society has decided we have to fit in, male, female, come together, have children, that's what you do and that's how it is. And when anyone sort of like deviates from that, then it just starts to become this whole like, conversation that really, like you said, isn't really anyone's business. And so I think that's part of why we're talking about that today is like, how do we just genuinely though get curious and learn the things we need to learn? Where do we learn them from? Who do we ask? Who do we not ask? But also, like, I'm a mom. I have 2 young kids who are starting to enter their first identity phase of like them recognizing that they're going to go through it, the whole teenager thing. And so I think we're going through identity changes and phases all through life. And some of us are a little more attuned to it than not. And I think we can walk out of this conversation, just like you said, not just talking about being gay the whole time, but also like how do these sorts of beliefs get in the way of our relationships with family members, and what are some things we can do? So for example, you know, as you're talking about society's expectations, you know, in this whole fitting in a box, like we're thinking, how can we encourage environments where, you know, you work in a school environment, like how can we encourage these environments, or what are some things you're seeing that really sticking where people can feel, you know, safe to express themselves in a way that is being authentic to who they are? Even if it doesn't fit the mold of, you know, being in the box of a boy, girl, man, woman, and all that stuff that we're told to do.
I think it's just having like that non-judgmental perspective, you know, like we're human. So like obviously we have grown up with biases, and you know, sometimes we can be judgmental fucks. Like it is what it is, you know? Like
that's gonna be the quote to the episode. Yeah. Sometimes we can be judgmental fucks.
But it's so true.
It's
like
so true though. You know, I love it.
We walk day to day, we're human, we've grown up, you know, making judgments, especially in our brown community. Like, come on, like, you know, especially on family members and things like that. Like, I think we've just like grown up with that.
Yeah,
so like,
it's hard
to kind of rewire that. But at the same time, when it comes to creating like that safety for other people, it is checking with ourselves. It always goes back to ourselves, you know, like I am not afraid to admit to this day, there are judgments that come to my head. Like, oh, it's almost like automatic where you can't really stop it. But I think it's like catching that judgment in the moment to be like, okay, Kevin, let's check ourselves. Like that's just either our biases, or that's probably come from a place from like your past or whatever. We need to start fresh here.
Yeah.
So I think it always comes back to ourselves and checking in with ourselves and be like, hey, why is this judgment coming through? Because if we're constantly judging or assuming about this person, how are we going to be able to create that sort of safe belonging for them? That needs to kind of be checked out so you can have that like sort of new opening or whatever for that person. So then they feel that sense of connection. Because when you don't have that, I'm always big on like affect and energies and things like that. Kids especially can pick up on shit so quick, right? So it's always going back to ourselves. And once they know that you're a safe person and you're a person that they can go to by just your body language, your energy, and all of that, I think that's what creates like that safety and that sense of belonging for them. And also the things that come out of their mouths too. Kids are so like, they're like the most honest people ever. Like whatever's on their mind, they're going to say, right? And they're going to expect a response from you. And it's always making sure that your response is authentic and like real too. I think like, especially in our profession, they're so used to like the norm answers, you know, of like, especially like working as like a practitioner in the mental health field. I think they've probably heard the same thing from their therapist the millionth time, or the youth worker that they worked with, you know? And I've learned that like just being authentic and just like real with the way you speak, the way you treat them as just like a human just creates that sort of belonging. And I think also just being like nurturing too. Like I'm a huge nurturer. That's just like who I've always been as young as I can remember. And just like being that safe person for them, whether it's like, you know, speaking about your own experiences, especially, or just like, even just being in like silence sometimes just like really helps them just think and be like, okay, I feel safe enough with this person where they're giving me this space to just be in my thoughts. And when I'm ready, like I'll be able to talk to them. So I think it just goes back to us checking ourselves and checking our biases and what we've grown up with the things that we've judged maybe in the past, and just creating that sort of safety for these people. Yeah.
And, you know, like if I can add, when we're talking about young people, kids, as parents, sometimes we get lost. And some of us, you know, it's because I know our parents' generation was a lot of sacrifice. And so some parents in all generations have to live life in this place where they are sacrificing all sorts of things. And so we get into this weird like ownership of our children, and we think that we own our kids. And, you know, I don't mean like own them by like, let me tie my kid up and lock them in a basement, even though I want to. I mean, own them like, you know, I'm going to decide what you're going to do in terms of like how you dress, how you do your hair, where we're going to go, even the conversations I'm going to choose to share with you, you know, and all these sorts of things really sort of educate our kids whether we want them to or not. And I think sometimes what you're saying with a lot of nonverbals, with, you know, the silence, and when you are a genuinely kind person, kids sense it as you're saying that. I think all of that helps our kids build that identity, like time to stop and think, having that silence, having the moments with people that are outside of just talking, but also being able to build insight and think about, okay, who am I wanting to be and what's the person? And, you know, whatever we want for our kids, like we have to understand they all go through this. You know, it's no different than the birds shooing their little babies out of the nest saying fly away. Like our kids they're bound to that. We all are bound to that. And I think, you know, when you're holding a secret that is part of who you are for 24 years, you know, like that's got to shape you as a kid. When, like, can we get into your story as, you know, a little boy growing up? Like, did you know that your identity was forming, you know, and you were homosexual? Did you understand that? Or how did you make sense of that, as we have parents who love us, but they're telling us all the things we have to do?
Yeah. I mean, like, as young as I can remember, like, I knew I liked boys. Like, it was just, like, I think watching Full House, like Uncle Jesse, like seeing him on the TV, I was like, okay, this is different, you know? Like,
it's all on John Stamos.
Yeah, like you can't go wrong with John Stamos. But as young as I can remember, I remember watching Full House and, oh, I like this guy. Like, but it's like a different sort of feeling, you know? Like, it's not just like, oh, like it's admiring, but it's like, no, like I feel attracted. Like, it's such a weird feeling to have as a young kid to something. But
why is that weird? Because like you think no one else is, or
I think that's what it is. Like, I think as young children, like, I was never taught like what attraction was, or what it's like liking a girl or a boy, you know, like that for me as a kid was like foreign. Like, that was never discussed. So I thought that was maybe a bad thing to like think in the moment or to feel. And especially when it came to like being attracted to a guy. Like, I grew up, you know, with like a lot of just hetero couples, and that was how it works, especially in our community too. You find a girl, you marry them, you have kids, you get a house, get your big boy job, and off you go, sort of thing.
That's right.
So for me, like, it was Uncle Jesse. And then also like just being like, I was always gravitated towards like feminine things. So like seeing my mom's makeup, like watching her get dressed. I remember as a kid, like I would like sneak off and actually put her lipstick on, and like I would wipe it off right away. And then my mom actually would notice or would ask me like, hey, did you put my lipstick on? Your lips look a little tinted than what they look like before. And obviously I would deny. But my mom never made it like a big deal or anything like that. She just like accepted it. But I always knew that I was different, like from my brother, who's like this masculine, athletic, sporty guy. Him and I are complete opposites. Like, I never liked sports, and my dad put me into soccer right away, you know, like I just did not like it. And like being in school, like just seeing all the other kids, like I think that's where I truly felt different, because kids would point out things. Because when you're at home, for me anyways, things never really got pointed out. I think like just with my parents, they were just like, maybe they were, I don't know, I've never had this conversation with them, but maybe they were nervous to bring it up or ever talk about like my mannerisms, the way I spoke, how I always like hung out with all like the girls or the ladies, never were around like the men or anything like that.
Like, can I ask at this point, if when you look back at that age, would you say like your parents should have had a good idea? Like, was it kind of obvious, or?
Oh, girl, they knew right when I came out. They're just like, my dad's like, I always knew you were gay, but we're just waiting for you to come out. But they always knew. That I think I mean, we can get into that later, but going back to like my childhood, it was a lot of. I just always knew there was like this true like intuitive feeling like where I knew, but that's when I got scared because I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to be living this truth. Like growing up brown, being gay was like frowned upon, like people in the family would talk about like how, like gay people, like, no, that's not a thing. Like that you're not going to live a happy life, and I really started to brainwash myself like I can't be gay, like we need to start exploring girls, or we need to like pray the gay away, as some people say as well.
Because it's a choice, right? So you can definitely just choose to be straight at that point. So it's a good point. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how it should work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't like imagine like having the choice. Do you think I'd really choose to be gay?
Okay, but did you believe it was a choice at that time? If you're like, I got to get onto girls, did you think, oh yeah, I'm choosing to like boys?
Oh, 100%. I thought it would, at that point, and like the way it was like developing or growing up, like I thought it would be a choice, because I was like, okay, if I'm feeling like this at like 5, 6, or 7, then by that time I get to like maybe grade 6 or 7 when I'm older, then I will start liking girls. And maybe this is just like a phase. Like, once I get older, then, we'll start exploring girls. And like, I remember like almost like forcing myself to have like my first crush in grade 7. Like it was a school dance, and like everyone was asking girls out to like their first school dance. You know that feeling?
Yeah, totally.
And I remember like
never got asked. I know that feeling. Yep.
Yeah. But like, I was like, I'm like, but I don't want to ask a girl. Like, I literally don't want to go out with any of the girls at school at all. But it's like, okay, I need to explore this because all the other guys are doing it. The girl kindly rejected my offer. Thank God. I was like, inside, I was like, oh, please, thank God that happened. Okay, we're not going to the school dance.
At least I tried.
Yeah, at least I gave it my effort, But I always just knew, but it was a lot of years of suppressing it too. So even though like I knew that I was different, that I liked boys, that I was more feminine than the other guys at school, them pointing it out as well. So I went through like a lot of bullying and things like that growing up in elementary and high school, them pointing out absolutely the way I walked. I remember one time it was so ridiculous. Like I didn't have like armpit hair, and apparently that classifies if you're gay or not. Like,
that was the trend.
That was like the trend and the experiences that I went through. And I'm like, when you go through all that, you're truly like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, is there seriously something wrong with me? And I just like lived that throughout my years until I came out when I was like 24. But even then, when I came out, a lot of those beliefs and a lot of those things that I carried with me was still with me. Like it wasn't just like a quick fix where I'm like out and all my traumas and experiences went out the window.
A Bollywood dance like going on in the background, right? And everyone's
Bollywood dance like on the mountains with the snow.
And no clothes on, obviously.
Yeah. My Hrithik Roshan just like coming out, like is
that the one for you? Was it Hrithik? That's who?
Yeah. Have you seen Hrithik Roshan now? Like
yes. Yes. That's so funny. So did you think it was going to be that way? Like, okay, I just got to build up to coming out, and then once I come out, then everything will be okay? Or were you worried about what would happen should you come out?
It's interesting. My coming out story was like, it happened where I actually never planned to come out. Like it happened because that's when I met my first boyfriend, my ex. So when we started to talk and then we went on our first date and all that fun stuff happened, I was like, okay, like I'm so gay. Like this needs to, this, like
So gay.
we need to figure this out ASAP because he was out and I liked him and at the same time, like he's like, I can't date a closeted guy. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't freaking blame you.
Yeah.
And it's not like he put a lot of pressure on me to come out, but he was just being real. Like he's like, I like this too, but I can't date someone that's in the closet.
Yeah.
And I was like, well,
for very fair reasons, like
100%.
Right? Like
exactly.
Going through a process with someone, like even if you think about like re-traumatizing, but also you're living, I'm in love with you, I have feelings for you, but it's like a lie or it's not real and all the, it's like, that's a hard place to be for both of you, I would imagine.
Because I was like, oh, like I know this is like what's meant to be, but at the same time, like shitting bricks, I'm like, holy fuck, this actually means that I have to like come to my truth and like just say it, like, and I was like, how am I going to freaking do this? Like, I'm in Calgary, my family's in BC, and I was not ready to like call them or just be like, okay, this is what's happening. So I was like, who's like the first person I can tell that like I trust and I know that they will give a fuck and like I just like just know. And that was my sister. So I was like, my sister and I are like super close. And like, that's like the first person I know I can come out to. And she'll be like, okay, thank the fucking Lord. Like, this is it. Yeah. So I came out to her and it's funny. She's like, does this mean you're bi? And I'm like, no, bitch. Like, this means I'm gay. Like, I'm gay. Like, there's no girls in this.
Yeah. She's like, what? How gay are you? Like,
yeah.
50%.
Like, scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah. Just a little bit so gay. Because everyone's gay for Uncle Jesse. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't count. That's not gay. That's just admiring art. Like
100%. So
shit, yeah. Like, you're like, no, I'm gay. You're like, I'm all the way. Okay, yeah, then.
Like capital G, I'm like gay. And she's like, okay, cool. Like, it wasn't anything like a surprise to her or anything like that. She's like, no, this is awesome. Like, this is good for you. Like, and then she's like, but how about mom and dad? I'm like, bitch, I know this is why I need to come to you first. So
phase
just like,
when you get to
commence. Phase 2 is that.
Is she your older sister or younger?
She's my baby sister.
Oh, your baby sister.
She's younger.
Yeah.
We've always been close growing up. And after I told her, then I told my brother. Okay. And my brother was someone that I also inherently knew that he would accept me for who I am too, just knowing his personality and just knowing who he is. Yeah. And he was just so happy for me. Like, he was just over the moon. But also, like, he's younger than me too, but he also like played this big brother role in that moment where he was also truly like kind of almost like nervous and afraid. He's like, okay, like this is who you are. I love that. But like, he empathized with the fact that like, I can't believe you carried that with you for 24 years. Like, that must have been really hard. And him acknowledging that like just really got us closer together. Cause like I mentioned before, we're polar opposites. Like
he's athletic and all the other things. And
masculine. He was super popular in school. He had a girlfriend, like things that I just didn't have and things that I like always envied about him. Cause I'm like, I wish I could have your life because it just seems so fucking easy. And you just have like all the things that like I wanted.
Right.
But just hearing that from him was like just so good. And then that's what was like the domino effect. I'm like, hey, this is actually not as bad as I thought it would be. Granted though, like if I'm being honest, I'm also blessed with like a super open and loving family too. And I know that experience is not for every brown kid out there. So I think that's what also made it easier for me, and that experience being a lot more like light for me.
Right.
So, and I'm always so grateful for that too, because I know it's not the same for everyone. And I do want to acknowledge that. And to the people that it's not, like, I honor them just so much more, because that's, as a kid, even as an adult kid, your parents' acceptance, especially in our community, is like so much.
It's a collective. It's a collective acceptance. It's not one or the other. So that's why you disappoint everyone or no one. So it's a lot of acceptance happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. I like how you mentioned the collective. I never actually thought of it that way, but you're so right, because it is a whole community of people.
Yeah, I think that's where the
Mm.
fear must come from, the lack of understanding too. When we are a collective, it's the whole, yeah, we know our catchphrase, like, what will people say? What will people
Yeah.
think? Our families all raise each other and live with that motto, and not saying that's a healthy way to live. We all know how that goes, but I think that's why it's like we have the pressure of, we have everyone to disappoint, not just one, two people, the community and everyone.
Mhm.
And then if you're religious, then you got the whole
Yeah.
God community. So like,
So many layers.
so many layers, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you also acknowledging that your story is your story, and everyone else may have a very different
Mhm.
experience, and that's not to take away or add or not. This is you sharing how that was for you. And so, yeah. So
Yeah.
now how long after you told your siblings did you decide to tell the parents? Like, how did that go down?
That was the next day. So I
The next
told
day?
the next day.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. The
you're like,
first
let's just get this done by the end of the
let's
week.
just yeah. I'm like, let's just rip off the band-aid and just, because I would rather them, because you know how word spreads, and like, not that I trusted my brother and my sister, but I also told a few other people that day. Just, I'm like, I got it off my chest. Like, let's just keep this rolling to the people that you trust and love, like, just so I can make this just easier for me.
Yeah.
And like, so I told a few other people, and I was like, no, I need to make sure mom and dad freaking knows before they hear from someone. Like, I would hate that. Not, and again, I trusted my people, but you just never know. Anything kind of
Yeah.
slip up, right? So I texted them. I didn't call them or anything, or even give them like a heads up, like, hey, we need to talk. Like in our family, we don't really talk about things either. So like having that as a big conversation, I'm like, there's just no way I'm ready for that at all. So I'm gonna be a little passive and just send you a text of like what's going on in life right now. And I sent my mom and dad a text at the same time.
Kevin, you
And
texted your parents?
I texted my parents. I know.
Like, I'm
I
just like,
texted my
hold on a second. Like that is literally okay. So
Yeah, that's
I was not
literally, and I still
expecting that.
have their
Okay. Thank God
yeah,
for
and I still have their
technology.
text messages till the day. Yeah, there's just no way. I was like, oh my gosh, like I was just so afraid to like. I don't think I could even like think of the words to like say verbally or communicate that to
Yeah.
them. Um, And I was like, okay, I'm like, thank God for texting. So let's just text it and see how this works. But
But
it
can you,
worked out
like, your
okay.
parents getting like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
They're like, we don't get texts like this often, but okay. But that's how it came out. I texted them this long paragraph, if you will, of like how I'm feeling, how I've always felt this way. I also shared like how I was like super afraid and scared that I'm gonna like lose them or like lose their support. Because I've always been close with my parents, and like that was like my biggest fear, is like losing my parents and like losing like family members, because we're all just, that's just like you said, a collective. Like those are our people.
yeah.
And so I texted them, and I still have their text messages till this day. I still keep it, and sometimes I read it time to time too, because it's like such a the responses back were just like so heartfelt. Like
Would you read
my
them to
mom.
us?
I think, let me see if I can pop them up.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's okay. That's fine. You'll come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my dad's response was, doesn't matter what, I always will love you. I knew for a long time that you're not straight. I didn't say anything because it didn't matter to me, because nothing will change between us. You will always going to be my son, and I always will love you. I'm not going to lie, it hasn't been easy to accept that you might not be straight. No worries, so I'm okay with you. Like I said, nothing is going to be different between us. Just remember, you can talk about anything. So that was from my dad. And then from my mom, it's okay. You don't have to worry about that. God made you. You are my son. You are the best son in the world. You don't have to worry. we want you to be healthy, and we enjoy you. We don't hate you. God made you like that. So yeah, it always like gets to me when I read those messages, because that's not what I expected. I expected I believe that there's like, nope, this is not okay. We need to figure this out, either get you fixed or pray the gay away. I don't know what, but that was their response. And, my dad's hit me harder, because there was that part where he was like, it's hard for me to accept it. And that was like the fear. Mm-hmm. But when we talked about it, the reason it was hard for him to accept it is because he was scared. He was almost like scared for my life. He's like, this is like not a normal thing for brown kids to come out. We accept and love you, and we will. But he's like, I'm just like kind of scared for his safety. Like, I want you to be treated with respect. I want you to be treated like everyone else. And I know it's harder for queer people to be out, especially when you're fucking brown too. Like, it's like, it's almost like, I don't give a fuck like who you love or who you care. I'll support you till the very end. But it's like, I think that's where his father instincts came in. It's like, but how do I protect you? Like, how do I protect you as my son? Because that scares me more than you actually being out. And my parents actually wanted me to move back to Vancouver right away. And it was like, okay, you need to come home though. Like, we need you to be with us. And I was like, fuck, how do I also tell them that I'm also seeing someone too?
Another day. That's another day. Like, come on.
I was like, this is too much. But I was like, no, I'm good. I feel okay. Like, I was like, I'm working, I have a good job and things like that. And I was like, if I need to come home, I'll come home. Like, I'll come home. And I came home 2 weeks after, because it was actually it was around Thanksgiving time. So I ended up coming home, and that flight, I was so nervous, because I'm like, this is a new version. This is like the real me. And it's like, I've never showed up as like gay Kevin, it's always like straight Kevin. And it's just like, okay, this is like so nerve-wracking for me. Like, how is this really going to be face to face? I fucking texted them. Like, this is, like,
you still have to, you still have a phase to go through here, which is seeing them. That's right. Yeah, you haven't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's only an hour flight too, so you didn't even have that much time.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like the most like nerve-wracking flight ever. And like, just, I didn't get picked up. I was like, I'll just Uber it home or take a taxi home, because I was like, I can just use all the time and just to really process this. But it was like nothing ever happened, which was like the best part. Like, they welcomed me with open arms. They didn't make it a big thing. And they just like, a lot of my other family members were there too, who knew as well. And my aunt is like super close with me, and she's like one of my biggest supporters. And she's one of those people who is not afraid to start conversations. She's really outspoken, and that's something that I really admire about her. But with my family and I, like, we again sweep things under the rug. So it wasn't a surprise to me that we didn't talk about it right away, because I think one of us was kind of waiting to initiate the conversation. Like, there's this big thing that happened, but like, I'm not bringing it up. Mom's not bringing it up. Dad's not bringing it up. My siblings know how we all operate too, so they're not bringing it up either. Yeah. So it's like this silence, acceptance, and love. But it's like, okay, we should talk about it. But my aunt is the one who brought it up. It was like, hey, I need to acknowledge this. Like, this is amazing. I really want to acknowledge the fact that you lived that way for so long. That must have been so hard for you. And then that's what kind of opened up like Pandora's box, like where my parents like gave me a hug. It was like, we truly love you. Like, this is going to be okay. And sorry, I'm getting emotional now.
No, don't be sorry. I appreciate it.
Yeah. But it just created like, I just felt so loved during that moment, and with my siblings and things like that. And then like fun conversations came about boys, and then he's like, okay, so you came out, like come to Vancouver, like this is like the gay scene, like why are you living in freaking Calgary, you know?
Cowtown, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, speaking of boys, I am kind of talking to someone, and they're just like, but they're so excited. They're just like, really? Like, who are you talking to? And I showed them a picture and things like that. And my parents were just like so cool with it. They're just like,
Wow.
oh, this is good. Like, they gave all the tips, like take it slow though. You just came out, like, and then rightfully so. I think I would say the same thing to my kid as well. But they trusted me. I think my parents just really trusted me that like I'm strong enough where I'll get through this. And I think seeing me in the flesh and in person after that, I think they got a lot of reassurance that, okay, I think he'll be okay back home. Like he's got this, and he knows that he has us if he needs anything, sort of thing.
Like, thank you for all of this, like this sharing, showing up, being present, sharing vulnerable moments, being okay to be emotional, all the things we're hitting for men's health awareness today. Look at this. You're like the poster man. Like when you look back and you reflect and you share your story and your journey, is there anything that stands out for you, or anything like as you're talking today that you're like, oh, this particular moment or time or conversation or feeling is what's, the nostalgia, like the action, like for you, that it's like a time machine you're kind of going back into 100%. Right now. So what part of this time machine journey are you finding is showing up right now?
I think my parents, like, when I moved back to Vancouver, I actually moved back in with my parents, which was like a whole different change itself. But you come back to it as if it's just like a normal life, like, but when talking about it, I'm just like, holy fuck, like I am like truly lucky and truly grateful that like that was my journey and that was my experience. Like I'm living such a normal life where I'm not like I wake up every day, I'm like, oh, I'm gay, like this is my life, like that's not how it is, because it just becomes such a norm. But like, reflecting on it, it's like, holy fuck, like that was actually a really big moment. And like to have like their love and support and like their kindness and their empathy. And even till this day, like they're just like by my side. Yeah. And wanting the best for me. And it's cute. It's like, okay, Kevin, like you're 33, and like they're having these like brown conversations with me of like, okay, like we want grandkids, like we want you to get married as well. And it's like, like I appreciate those conversations, because I'm like, oh, like, okay, they're still like on my side.
Yeah,
like
you're not off the hook because you're a gay brown guy. Get in the same pressure line as every other brown guy that has to get married. Like, come on.
But that's the thing. I never thought that would be a thing for me with them. Like I honestly was like, oh, like they still see that vision for me, like getting married to a guy. Like they always mention, like, where's your husband? Like, how's the dating scene? And like, we do want those grandbabies, and like, and it's like so nice to hear. And I'm just like, oh, like, okay, nothing has changed. Like you don't feel like I'm going to all of a sudden be straight all of a sudden and bring a girl home, or things like that. Like, I think a lot of those like fears are just like being like let go. And just going back to your question, I think like going back to like the time machine and being nostalgic is like really my parents, like, and just like remembering those moments of like, oh, like they're just so awesome. Like, I don't know how else to really put it, but yeah.
Honestly, like a huge kudos to your parents, because like, for many of the South Asian cultures, like your culture and your religion emphasizes compassion and non-judgment. And for many of us, as we know, and to be honest, a lot of religions and cultures truly do emphasize compassion, non-judgment. We don't all follow it. And so your parents, like their response back to you is such a kind example of how those principles, when they're applied, what that can do for your child. Because I would imagine that would be about the time you would start to tackle some of your own internalized homophobia too. Like you're growing up in your own space, in your own head for 24 years. You talked a little bit about your own internalized homophobia, but the minute a child is, like you said, doesn't matter if you're an adult child, young child, but when your parent sees you, like really sees you, that trust that you said that your parents gave you, all of those things, I think, help us excel in terms of the kind of people we want to, hope our kids, are going to be who we want to be. So just thought that's huge. I don't know if I was about to ask you a question or I just wanted that to be a statement.
No,
but I'll leave it at that. Cause I think that's okay. So like, let's just for a second talk, you mentioned other kids and maybe other brown kids that don't get to have the same outcome or story. Like, what advice would you give them when they are living with their truth and, maybe it's not about coming out, they're figuring out they have to stay in, or that's where they're at. So what comes up for you? Like what advice or what thoughts would you want to share with them?
I think my biggest thing, my advice for those young people is like, take your time, like really just take your time in a sense of like, understanding like who you are and understanding your situation, and to find like that self-acceptance first. I think it's this question, like I'm relating it actually back to some kids that I've worked with when I was a social worker, and where I've had files of young gay people who are of color in our community, or like in the Middle Eastern community that I'm thinking of, the two in particular, where it was not safe for them to come out, period. Like it was just not safe, like at all. And that is like so scary, because there is also that understanding of like, there is that family piece. It's like, but this is my family. Like, and it's like, I get it. Like you mentioned, like the collective piece. And for those kids, it's like, inside, you be authentic to yourself, keep true to who you are, like, I think it's very valid, the fact that you're taking your safety into consideration, and that your time will come when the time is ready, and I think that's important for them to understand. It's like, okay, like being true to myself and being authentic to myself is what is important. And also knowing that they're not alone and that there are resources out there, and that you taking the time to come out to your parents because of such extreme measures is okay. Like it's okay. Or I've also worked with kids who are just like, fuck you, I'm coming out and I don't give a fuck, like what you think. And their journeys are just different, where they go through a lot of hardship and they go through a lot of extremes, where they're kicked out of their house, where they're left homeless, where they're now exposed to like, youth shelters. And then it becomes like kind of like this spiraling thing, that's what hurts me. It's just like, you've come out, you're so brave, you're so honest with yourself, and you've faced your demons. And then there's like that flip side of like now being exposed to so much more trauma out there. And it just becomes this whole thing. But I think for me, it's like, really follow your instinct and follow your gut on this. And I just don't want kids to like, or anyone to feel like they need to keep it a secret. I think I feel like if you keep it open to yourself and it's like, this is who I am, this is my journey, I know that there will be a time where I'll be able to be who I am. I think just stay true to that. Because there's just so many layers, it's just like, there's that safety piece, there's like that family piece. And like, it's so much easier to say and to encourage, like, no, come out, just do it. you know, like just come out to your parents, like fuck that, like this is 2024, like, you know, everyone's coming out. It's like, but everyone's journeys so different, everyone experiences are so different. And I think like coming out to yourself first, being true to yourself first, and like taking that in, I think is a good first step. And then I truly feel everything else would kind of fall into place, because families also, and your people also need to go through that as well themselves, whatever that looks like, because you're also, they've grown up in a household or as with their own beliefs of like, this is not okay. Like, it's also them needing to rewire that as well. You know, it's also them needing that space to do that too.
Maybe it's like grief and loss in some ways, and that's okay. Whatever space, like you said, they need, because like you said, when you showed up, it was like a different Kevin that your family was going to meet again, and at least that's what you thought, and so that makes sense when you say that. Yeah,
I think it's like, that's what I did for my parents too. And I remember telling them, like, if you, like I said, I know this is a lot for you guys as well. So you need to also be honest and real with me if things are like hard for you, or if you have any questions, or if like this is something that is going to take time to process, because it can be a lot for parents. I've worked with parents where their kid has come out to them and the parents would be like, this is hard. Like, you don't understand. Like, I grew up thinking this is not okay. And all of a sudden my son is like, I'm gay, like, accept me. And it's just like, you do have a point, and it's very valid. And it's actually your truth as well. How can I dishonor that and be like, nope, you still have to accept him for who he is. Like, I don't really care what you think. It's like, no, put that judgment away. And it's like, okay, but now it's like, how do we support you through this process too? This is, like you said, it's like a grief and loss for you as well. Like, you probably envisioned, like my parents did with me, like my son's going to grow up, marry a woman, have the best life ever. And my job here is kind of done, you know, like every parent's wish is kind of like that.
Yeah.
And I remember this one parent being like, I just need time. I really need time, like, to really accept this and to really process this. And parents need that. I think parents need that opportunity. Like my parents, when they saw me, it's like, okay, I trust you. Like, I see you. I see how happy you are. Now I trust you. And I think parents who initially don't accept or whatever, I think they need to see that as well. It's like, okay, but I need to see you be this gay kid, and also like trust the fact that you're going to be okay, because it makes sense. I think I empathize with them, because it makes sense in a sense where it's like how my dad said, I want to protect you. I think their initial thing, how do I protect you though? How do I protect you from the world? How do I protect you from my family? How do I protect you from extended family members or whoever like are not going to accept this at all? It's like a whole bunch of things where it's like, you're still my child. Yep. Like, I need to protect you in so many ways. So I don't know if that answer made any sense.
No, you know what, Kevin? It was so well said, because like a lot of what I'm hearing you talk about is even if we put it in the way of like, you and I grew up in the, we're child of immigrant parents, right? So we got the Western world, Indian world. In the Western world, coming out is often seen as a milestone of self-acceptance and, like you said, liberation, like you are encouraged. There's lots of resources. You're encouraged because like we want everyone to be able to live a life where they get to be themselves. But sometimes that whole concept doesn't translate as you're saying. It doesn't translate in our communities and our families and our faiths, all these sorts of things. It like you said, you're taught one way and now your kid is challenging that. And I think in all of that, there is like lots of, as you said, resources and places to deal with sometimes things that are bigger than us. And, we don't know how to make sense of. And a racialized therapist is someone that could even support parents, support kids in this process of like, we can't control things. So then how do we try to be, make sense or live in some sort of being in charge of something versus controlling this thing? And I like what you're saying a lot, and I like what you're encouraging. And I think you're right. Like everybody, when there's a change in their household, has to go through a process, some quicker, some not, some maybe will take years, whatever it may be. But a lot of what your parents did was also having some acknowledgement and honesty about, here is genuinely how I feel. But also, like, you know, we don't own you. Like we raised you. We have faith in what we did and when we raised you, and now we're going to let you decide. And, you know, your dad has every right to want to protect you. But I think sometimes to some of our parents is like, you guys want to protect us because you lived a life where you had to survive, and you know, we're in thriving mode. And sometimes we have to also find a way to tell our parents, like you said, you're going to trust me, but also maybe I can be part of some of that change, because we can't also live our lives just protecting our kids too, because then we don't get to deal with the stuff as well. So there are those parents that are ready, like, you know, thank you for being part of the community and people like you being out there and wanting to talk. And then there's some people that are not in that place, and that's where they're at, and they'll get to where they need to be. But the bottom line is, and what we've been saying all day is, our kids, our loved ones cannot find self-acceptance if we are part of the issue or getting in the way of, you know, them finding a way to fulfill their lifespan, the whole lifespan. So, so what you said made a lot of sense. A lot of what you said today, all of what you said is hitting home, making sense. And I'm hoping for people listening also maybe opening some doors as well around, okay, giving ourselves some, you know, patience and reassurance that these conversations are not easy. And when we have loved ones that are experiencing these things, like, we get to have our tantrums and feel the way we feel, but is there a time that we can, you know, come back to finding some sort of way to have respect so that the people around us can live, you know, like that's sort of the hope. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because it's at the end of the day, it is like instilling hope and like instilling that no matter what your background is, no matter who you are, like, you are a worthy person and a deserving person to live your absolute authentic and most happiest life. You know, it's like, how can we as a community, how can we as a society, how can we really come together to help you fulfill that? Like, at the end of the day, we're all responsible for our own lives and our own happiness, our own joy, and the choices and things that we make in life. But at the end of the day, we're still living in a community with billions of people, and like, we still live in a society. And, you know, if we can all do a little something to make someone feel a little safe in their journey or in the world, like, that probably will do wonders for that person, you know? And I think like I said before, it feels like we're heading into that direction. It's so much more different from when I came out, which was only like 9, almost like 10 years ago, which is like not too long ago, but it's still very different from where it was then and where it is now, especially working in schools and like, especially working in the field with kids. Like, there's so many just more kids out, and there's so many more kids just authentically being themselves. And I think that has to do with the movement and what we've been doing as a community and as a society to make these young people feel safe, where it's like, okay, this feels like a safe world where I can be, you know, myself, whether it's like being more quirky or being just like more outspoken or being out in the community. Is just like, I just see, I don't know, especially with kids and working with them, it's like, it's just different now, where it's like, they're just like really just who they are. And like,
I know, it's like
unapologetically too. It's actually a pretty cool thing to see.
It is. I you know, talk about my boys, and my oldest is almost 13, and this is me working in the field. We've worked together. We've been colleagues. And so working with young people, you see things, you go to school, you learn these things. So now as a parent, I understand my son's going to enter this identity world. So I want to be the parents that encourages self-acceptance and belonging, as you and I are talking about today. So, you know, I want to make sure Carrie and I are being inclusive. So we always tell our kids, you know, we're hanging out with this friend. I'd let them know about you. I'm recording with you. And just so that it's natural as part of every day. We have friends that are gay. We have friends that are brown. We have friends that are white. We have friends that are black. Like, we're all everywhere. We're not just, you know, one household, and this is one way that we do. And so my son is starting to like what one parent would think, oh, I have a boy, the opposite sex. But for me, right away, I'm like, shit, here we go. Like, I can't just jump in with, what girls are you into? I got to do the whole thing. So there's this day where my son and I are talking, and I'm just like literally thinking I'm being the best professional mom and tiptoeing around. You know, so when you do choose, if you choose with whatever person, with what kind of sexual, or like trying to be all the inclusive and so fucking vague at the same time, right? And he's like picking up on this, and he just stops me because he's just like, oh my God. And he's like, Mom. I'm like, yeah. He's like, I like girls. And I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, you know, if that's what you may like, that's great. And if you're not sure later, you know, we can figure it out. We just want you to feel loved and enough. And he's like, I get it, Mom. But then, you know, that led to another conversation recently around, I always talk about this white girl complex I have. And so my son's like, is it a problem for you that I like blonde girls? So now I'm like, oh, okay. We've really opened up the doors to conversation. And sometimes, you know, as a parent, like, you just don't know what your kids are going to bring. And I think we're just blessed and fortunate, whatever they bring to us, because that also shows us that, you know, we're earning trust and the things that your parents did with you, for you to find a way to go to them and share something scary. You know, so this is like love and connection. And that's what all of our communities, again, try to, you know, and talk about, and whether it's our culture or our faith or values or whatnot, and how can we build or bridge that, I think, love and connection as you know, people that come and share these intimate stories. And I think that's what we're kind of trying to do now. So do you want to add anything to that? Because I know I'm just looking at the time too. I don't want to keep you forever, but I have a couple more questions for you. So I just want to know if there's anything that you want to add there.
No, I think you nailed it on that. I think in just creating like that openness and like that sense of belonging for people, and especially with your kids, like I find those conversations to be like so like heartfelt, you know, and it just like, and it's funny because when he's like, oh, Mom, like, okay, let's cut to the chase. Like, I see where you're coming from, but it's like, no, I like my girls. Like, we're good.
Like, you know, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. But I just, you know, sometimes, as you know, we work with young people, and it's a tricky time, right? Like, I always find adolescence is like such a romantic time. And I really appreciate that, because you really do start to figure out your identity, and maybe don't get it until you're an adult. But we are shaping these kids, and I think we have to be very aware as an adult around our kids, and how we pose some of our fears and worries. And, you know, like, my question to you is, how can someone unlearn bias or fears that they've been taught? You know, that some parents you've worked with, like, they've said, this is all I've known, or I have these fears, or there's no good coming to you if this is the life you choose. So how would you address that, or support people that are in that place and a lonely place of, you know, I don't know how to unlearn these things?
I think it goes back to like checking in with yourself. Like, I think getting an understanding and like a story for yourself, like, where did that originate from? You know, I think it's like important for us to like be curious about those judgments and those fears and those biases. I think like starting with that, and just like, but not like shaming yourself for it. I think like when we maybe do go back, I can speak for myself, but anytime I do go back to my like biases or judgments, I think before I just like shame myself, I'm like, oh, I'm such an asshole. Like, why did I believe that? Or why did I think that? But when you sit down and be curious with it, but it came from somewhere, you know, we can't blame ourselves as like young kids when we're growing up around those sorts of things and bias and judgments. Like, we're taking in the information that we've been taught as kids. And it's like, give ourselves some grace, you know, give ourselves that grace and that openness. Okay, these were my judgments and these were my biases based on A, B, and C, based on my experience with my family, my parents, the people around me, things I saw on TV, like anywhere. Like, you can create so many judgments. Yeah. But it's like, what can I do now to rewire that or change that? Like, what are some actionable steps that I can do? Like, for me, God bless my therapist. Like, I love him to death. Like, he's truly helped me rewire a lot of those thoughts, like about myself, about other people. And he's like taught me those skills to like have figured that out. And it's also like having conversations like this, like you and I are having right now, and with like other people, and just like not being afraid of those conversations, and like gathering like opinions and values from other people. And like you'd be amazed like how one conversation can really change your perspective on things.
I believe it.
Like,
I believe it.
yeah,
I've seen it.
100%.
You know, we don't have
Yeah.
billions of people, you know, that tune in. However, we have so many that do, that leave us messages or reach out to guests like you that say, because you said this thing, it really clicked for me. And
Yeah.
you know, like these are great conversations. And I think sometimes we, you know, you started with this in the beginning about, can we just simplify things? And maybe towards the end, I'll bring it back to your point, because sometimes we do complicate these things. And if we just simplify it and start with conversation, even if we're not ready to go to therapy, if we're not ready to, you know, come out, we're not ready to go there yet or accept our child, can we start with some kind of conversation, whether it's with ourselves or one other person? Because I think it helps us get more clear, you know, as we're trying to figure out, where am I going in this part of the story here? Am I going to be my kid's life and not, or, you know, whatever it is that folks have to go through. And I get talking about it right now is, you know, sometimes people are like, oh, you know, you say this and you don't know what it's like. And it's like, yeah, I'm not there with you. I only know my experience. I'm working off of what you're saying, Kevin, but also like as general, just good old fashioned humans, I think we all know what it's like to be seen. We all know what it's like to exist. We all know when we have been believed about, you know, who we are and what that's done for us. So, you know, like I said, we'll keep repeating it, because that's what we're trying to get to. So can you pick an age of you know, going back, an age that stands out as we go back into this nostalgia time machine? What's an age that stands out for you where you would want to go back and talk to that self, that age, that person? And what would you want to tell yourself at that age?
This is such a good question. I think I would go back to my 30-year-old self. So like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I would go to that person, or to that time in my life, because that's when I broke up with my first serious boyfriend. You know, like the person that I mentioned before, he was like my first boyfriend and my only actual experience ever too, when I came out. So like when we decided to split up, that was like a whole new, it felt like that was like my beginning. It was almost felt like that was like my true coming out. Cause I'm like, oh, like this is like another version of myself. And this is like a new experience, because when I came out, all I knew was really him, and in addition to a lot of things that we've been through, but that was like really my experience. And I think with that version, what I would tell them is that, like I said before, giving advice to to anyone, it was like, slow down. Cause I was like, I'm single, let's do this, let's get out there, let's have fun, which is all good too. I'm all about like letting loose and just experiencing all the joy in it too. But I had this idea in my head that like, okay, this is like my single life. I'm like truly out. This is me to explore, to have fun. But I didn't slow down. And I think if I were to slow down to really process who I am, what my traumas were, what my experiences were, and like, I didn't validate those experiences. I just, interesting enough, just having this conversation, I just started to validate those experiences and everything I've been through just recently, like with my therapist, actually. Because I thought that, oh, like, I don't want to play the victim. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to play that role. Like, you know, I came out, like my parents expected me, like, what more can I ask for? And then like when really like dissecting it and really going through like all my traumas and things like that, I was like, whoa, that was actually a lot for me. Like those are actually like valid points and perspectives that I didn't really acknowledge before. And if I could take it back, I would tell that 30-year-old self, like, okay, have fun, but also like soak in the moment of like slowing down, but also processing this big chapter that you just unleashed in your life, you know? And I think I was suppressing it still. Like, I think my old beliefs and my old values and like the thoughts that I had about myself, like that closeted gay Kevin was still there.
Yeah.
It was still there. That fear was still there until recently, when talking about the things that I went through, I'm just like, oh, like those are valid moments. Like those were actually moments of like some level of trauma where I was like, oh, that was nothing. It's fine. A lot of people just go through that. Like, I'm sure I'm not the only person, which is true. I'm probably not the only person that's gone through similar experiences, but I needed to honor that. I really needed to honor that. And that in itself got me into more of a prouder gay person, or even just a person in general. Like, I'm just like proud of who I am, proud of my journey. I feel like this weight almost got lifted off my shoulder, acknowledging all that and just being like, okay, that was actually really hard. Like, it's okay to acknowledge that's really hard, and that still doesn't make me the victim. Like, I'm still a strong individual person, and if anything, it's brought a lot of confidence in me, and it just allowed me to be really like authentic to myself. And I think that's my
middle fingers up.
Yeah, and that's when you ask me that question, I think that's like my middle finger.
Oh, we're going
like,
into it. Okay, you're gonna, because that would have been my question. Okay, this is your middle fingers up. Okay,
yeah, my middle fingers up is like really like honoring your past and your trauma and the experience that you've been through. I think like, you know, as we're shifting into the world with this mindset of like being strong, being confident, which is all beautiful things, and just like not playing the victim and like all those things that like, which is a great shift. It's like, but we still have our past and we still have things that have happened to us, and taking the time to really honor that and validate that is something that's really important. And that doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less than, it doesn't make you the victim. It really just validates that part, because when I validated those parts, like a lot of my like my 5-year-old self was healing. When I came out as 24, that part of my version was healing. Even as like a 30-year-old, like I was like feeling all this feeling like, oh, like it's really like validating so much for me, which I think is so important, because you know, when you go through self-discovery and introspective work and self-awareness, like you want to be the baddest bitch alive and just think that like all those things was in your past, and like I'm this like new person and all of those things. But it's like, but I feel stronger now. Going through those times was really tough for me. It's like I needed to actually dive back into that. And yeah, I think like it's just important for when you're ready and the time is ready, because again, everyone's journey is different. It's like that introspective work, or looking deeper and validating moments in your life where maybe you thought that wasn't a big deal. I would encourage people just to go back to it, because it's probably something that is worth honoring and just like validating for yourself.
I think you said that so well, Kevin. And if I can add, like what sticks out to me is, you know, like time is such a luxury, and we give each other time. You gave me so much time today, and I don't want to take up more than I know my time is coming up with you. But I think when we give ourselves time in the way that you're talking, that's what I hear you saying, is like you gave yourself time to stop, and the world is spinning, your stuff is spinning, you're new, you're old, all your story is everywhere, and you're just sitting in it. And we don't often reflect, you know, like very successful creatives, people that are in positions, leadership positions, all sorts of things, talk about giving yourself that reflective time, whether it's at work or at home, just to, you know, probably a really good mom that has to drive 16 kids to soccer practice knows this. Like, you got to look at your calendar, you got to stop, you got to reflect. It's the same way, like you sit internally, and I hear what you're saying. We go through all these things, and sometimes it feels like we're fine, but sometimes our body's wearing it for us, and we don't recognize that, or sometimes it's tucked somewhere deep, and it only comes out when we allow ourselves to go there. And so kudos to you for just standing still in the midst of all that chaos, or however you want to word it. Sorry, I just assumed. Because the way you talk now, the way you talk today, I would imagine like there's grounding parts to it. Like you seem like you got your roots and you know where you came from to know where you're going next. And yeah, we can't let go of that. We can be joy and happy and yay and all TikTok and blah blah blah. But you're right. Like the past dictates where we're going. I mean, if you even think about history repeats itself, you look at all our social studies books and all the stuff. Like history will repeat itself. So why wouldn't it do the same in our own journeys? So I really love how you said that. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
So lastly, you did your middle fingers up. So is there anything that you wish we did talk about today or that you want to go back, clarify before I ask you to do a call to action for our listeners?
No, I think like that was honestly like such a good discussion. Like, thank you for having me on here. And like, thank you for like giving me this like opportunity to like really reflect back. Like, when we go through life, we don't really, well, I know for myself, I haven't really like gone back to the past really to talk about these things. So, especially about my parents, so I appreciate that. I'm gonna love them a little bit extra hard today.
Oh yeah, man, let them know. And like, let them know you're not the only one. I think, I don't even know if they know this. Like there are people that are going to listen to this and get something that's not just being inspired. There's going to be a lot of other things that are going to come out of that because our parents, I don't know, our parents' generation is it's the one that's to unlock, right? To help us, as you say, we need to know our past and move forward. So that generation has a lot of things that I think we can, I don't know, go back, honor, thank, forgive, 100%. Whatever the words we want to use. So kudos to you to send them some love today. Okay, call to action. If there was one thing and only one thing that people today were going to leave with, well, I hope that's not just the one thing, but if it is, what would you want that one thing to be?
To leave with? Oh, you're digging deep, Kieran. I don't know. I think just like a lot of like self-acceptance, love, like happiness, like, we're here to like live this one life. Like, why not make it the best possible life that we can live, right? Like, whatever that looks like for you too. Everyone measures happiness in so many different ways. And I think sometimes we see things like on social media or whatever, what happiness can portray or it should be. But I think like what goes back is like internally, like I want to like leave this world universe. Like I want to leave fucking happy. Like I want to know like I've like lived my best life. I've done things that I wanted to do in life. And just like, when I'm like RIP in my casket, like I'm just like, okay, that was a good life. Like,
are you getting mummified good. Too? That looks like that's you're going for that one too?
Hopefully not a place like this, but we'll see. Maybe I'll let the middle fingers up.
Yeah, right, or like the peace sign. You should have the peace sign because that's what you want to leave with, right?
Honestly, yeah.
Just peace like a little selfie.
Yeah,
with the balloons. I love it.
I know.
I'm so sad that we only have so much time because I worked so hard today to not get distracted. And you're like one of the best people to go get distracted with. So I feel like we have to come back again. But I will say this. I will say to everyone listening today, these conversations are door openers. And if you want to contribute to this conversation, open it a little wider. You know where to find us. You can also reach out to Kevin if you like. We'll put his Instagram info. What is it? The socials? Is that what cool people say? We'll put his socials up in the show notes.
The socials up, yeah.
But I just want to say, like, this conversation today is a big part of why we keep raising our voices. Even when it feels like we're repeating ourselves, because it matters. For those who've faced, right? It matters. For those those that have faced rejection simply for being who they are, this isn't just a theoretical issue. Like we're talking about humans. So it's real. It's lived. It's painful. And it's only through understanding, compassion, and willingness to unlearn that we can begin to sort of break these harmful cycles and, hear more about the good things the younger generation's doing, hear more about what all the other generations are doing to help people die peacefully, as Kevin is hoping for. That's his ultimate goal. And that's what we want. We want that for him. We want that for all of us. So thank you so much. Like we said at the beginning, we're so glad you guys came today to hang out with Kevin and I. Kevin, I'm going to thank you and reach out to you again soon, because I would love to have you back again.
That's a lot of fun.